Okay, hey, thank you so much for joining us from wherever you are. Um, your home, most likely. But I meant that more in terms of like wherever you are in this world. So I know we had some registrations from up north in Ontario. We had some down in the southern states and on the west coast. So I really appreciate you joining me. So I would love to start off. I have Isaac, my son, is helping me with the chat room tonight. So I just love to hear from you where you're calling in from tonight. So, and there's a small delay, so you will type, and if you, probably about 35 seconds later, I would get responses. So, and the next thing, so you should see them there, yeah.
Oh, just here?
I'm not sure how to think about that. So the other question I'd love to see in the chat why you are here tonight, like why you are interested in finding your why. So
I got it. Okay.
So, yeah, also I just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to get dressed today because I'm sure, like a lot of you, it has been like a jogging pants and sweatshirt a couple of days, maybe a week. The good news is I still fit like a bunch of my clothes. So I'm really happy about that. So there's a few more people still logging in. I see the numbers coming along. So I will just wait a few more minutes before we really get into it.
A lot of people are saying hi.
Yep. Okay, yeah. So, perfect. That's great. Okay. So, man, most people are within throwing distance. Is it frozen for you, Isaac, or is the feed still going?
It's still going.
Oh, I have it paused. That's why. Okay, perfect.
Wow.
Okay, so what we're going to do tonight, if you haven't downloaded or opened up the workbook we'll be going through, you just need to go to leadingwithnice.com, and in the space where you register, which is a little bit down the page, you can click on register now, and that will send you the link to the documents. So I will also put them in the chat here. I think I have them handy. Find your why. Copy. So if you don't have the workbook handy, there's a link in the chat now, and you can follow that link, and you'll be able to follow along. So, Isaac, where are some people from?
So we have Scarborough.
Yes.
East York.
East York. Wow, that's far.
And Muskoka.
Muskoka, very nice.
Oh, and Milton.
Milton, wow, I feel bad for those people. So, no, that's my sister. Unless you're not my sister, in which case I feel bad for you? No. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start looking right now at this document. And if you have it open, that's great. If not, that's okay. And just, there are two types of people that typically attend workshops. There's people like me who are happy to, just kind of go with the flow and know what's going along.
Some questions here.
Okay, we'll get there. Okay. And then there's the type of people that like to know agendas. So there's an agenda, and I promise I'll do my best to look at it. So we're going to start with the introduction of this concept that Simon Sinek pioneered called the Golden Circle. We're going to move on to an appreciative inquiry timeline exercise. Then we'll do a process called extracting the DNA, and I refer to DNA as moments or truths. We'll get to that. We'll create your first why statement, we'll process it, and then we'll talk about the who, how, and what. However, I just want to be clear. We actually won't do a thorough, complete process tonight. What I want to do is give you the high-level overview. This workshop, like this Facebook Live, in conjunction with the document, will be enough that you'll be able to go back and forth. How's the audio? Okay, yeah, so Allison was checking the audio because Yeah, the normal production crew is what's one guy, and he's at his home in East York. So that's that. So we will go through that tonight, but we won't. I mean, it's unlikely tonight you will come out with your completed, finished, polished why statement. And the reason I'm personally really interested in this is I think having a personal why statement is so powerful. And I'll think about I use it in the example, and some of you will be familiar with this. Earlier last year, and I'm using this example because I thought it really summed it up. I was meeting with a foundation, and they were launched by a summer camp. And the purpose of the foundation is to send kids to summer camp. And they were really having a hard time with their messaging and trying to figure out, what programs they should start talking about. But as we talked through their session, I asked a question. Their foundation sent kids to the summer camp that launched them. It makes sense, right? They are the foundation of that camp, so they sent them there. But I asked a question, if the camp no longer existed, would you still raise money and send kids to camp? And without question, or any hesitation, the answer was yes, they would definitely do that. And the reason is, the why for that organization is they believe every kid deserves a chance at summer camp. They don't believe that only this summer camp. They believe that every kid deserves a chance at summer camp. So right now, they have a camp they're associated with. So they raise money, they send kids to that particular summer camp. But if it didn't exist, they could send kids to another summer camp. And why it's so powerful is as they're going out to speak to donors, it really gives them a simple why to speak about. So if one donor was interested in a particular program, they could talk about that program with real intimacy. But at the end of the day, it's all about sending every kid to summer camp. So maybe they're at another event and they're talking to people about the foundation. They could easily talk about another program within the foundation, but at the end of the day, it sends people to summer camp. So we'll get into that. I have a few more examples as we go through, but I probably should have done a format where I can share slides. But on page 3, I just want you to have a look at the golden circle. And this is if you watched Simon Sinek's TED Talk, you would have seen this his illustration of the golden circle, and you've heard a great story, and I'll share it about Apple. And he would say this, that the golden circle includes 3 rings. The outermost one would be what. The second one would be how. The third one would be who. And the last one would be why. So I'm just going to actually, just do if I can do a big one for you here. So you have what, how, who, and then this one is why. So what Simon Sinek says about this golden circle is most people in most companies would start on the what. Then they move into the how, and then they move into the why. He doesn't have the who part, and I'll explain the who in a second. He says this, Apple Computers has a why, and it's that they believe every person should have beautiful interactions with technology. So that's that. Now, if that's their why, how does that play out? Well, how they do that is they have an online and retail stores where they sell computers. And what they do is they sell basically hardware, right? That's what they do. That's the whole kit and caboodle. Now, he would say, look at another company like Dell or HP. What Dell does is sell computers. How they do it is online. And why they do it is, I don't know, make money, I guess. Now, making money is a noble pursuit, but it can never be your why. Money is always a means to an end. Is there any questions coming in?
Well, from a while ago.
Oh, from a while ago. So what's one of the questions?
So Cindy asks, I am hoping my why will help with increased clarity for my biz and the direction I take it.
Okay, what else? Was there another one?
And I don't know how to pronounce her name, but like
Jeff. Yeah.
Okay.
I know, it's who spells her name that way?
Wow, Dad. Then Jeff asks, I want to refine my why. I like helping people, but how do I use that in my business?
Great. Okay, perfect. So we just looked at a very high level overview of Apple and HP and how they might use this. I like to throw in the who, and why I think the who is important is with your why. I believe that as humans we're relational, we're social beings. Even people who would describe themselves as introverts don't want to actually live in a cave by themselves for their entire life and have no interaction with people. Um, I'm not people out there who are introverts are saying yes, I would like that very much, but truly we're social beings and we long for community. So the reason why who is important is at some point in your why, you're going to intersect with who pretty quickly. And those are the people that you're doing things for and with. So that's just an important piece. And that's different than if you are watching Simon Sinek's TED Talk or if you've read his books where it's a little bit different and will deviate. And I'll take you down to the appreciative inquiry timeline. And this is where I'm going to get you to take about 5 to 7 or 8 minutes just to do some brainstorming and some noodling. So appreciative inquiry is a really awesome model. I use it in many different areas. It came out of Stanford University. And if you've ever had to do a SWOT analysis, this is like the appreciative inquiry is the other way of doing a SWOT analysis. For those who don't know what that is, it stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And the long and the short of it is you would, if you're doing strategic planning or some sort of visioning exercise, you would go through those 4 things: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. However, when I first started consulting, I used a SWOT analysis. And after a few months, I realized I could not stand it because what happens is we spend all our time in weaknesses and threats. And often those things, the threats in particular, probably wouldn't even come true. And we also spend a lot of time in opportunities. And so we would do this game called Start, Stop, and Shelve. And it was really to help prioritize. And what happens is, and I'm sure if you've done this with your organization, you have a lot of new opportunities, so lots of new things you should be starting, but nobody is saying, let's stop this or let's shelf this idea. So what you end up with is this huge list of things you're supposed to do, a ton of threats and a bunch of weaknesses. It's really a hard one. So what appreciative inquiry does, it asks you a series of questions. And the 2 we're going to focus on tonight is when have I been at my best and what have I longed for? So the first part of this is I'm going to give you about 5 to 8 minutes to take some time to write down when have I been at my best. But I want you to do 3 categories. The first one I want you to do is when have I been at my best? And I want you to look back maybe from the time you were 18, 17 till about a year ago. And then the next part I want you to look at is when am I at my best? And that's the area I want you to look at maybe in the past 9 months and look into the future about 3 months. So you can probably articulate how you might be at your best in these next few months. So just do those 2 exercises. So take 7 to 10 minutes now. And the key is when you're writing down things like when have I been at my best, if you've read through the document, you'll have seen a few examples. So you might write down, I was at my best when I coached my kids' hockey team. Or I was at my best when I worked really hard to get the grades to get into the university program I wanted to. Things like that. So take a few moments on a scrap piece of paper or on your computer and just write down those times in your past, and then also when you are currently at your best. So you might write down, I'm at my best right now at home with my family, coming up with great games to play every day. If that's you, by the way, let me know what the games are. So take 5 to 7 minutes. We're at 7:15. We'll come back at like 7:22. Okay. If there's any questions, Isaac is monitoring. Okay, so we'll just give another 30 seconds to come back. And like what I would love to hear is when a few examples, if they're not too personal, uh, when have you been at your best? Is that you? I'm just trying to, I have a little,
It's out of focus.
yeah, it's fine. There we go. I'll just turn mine off. My audio is giving me feedback. Sorry. So I just love to hear in the comments a few times that you've been at your best. Nothing too personal, of course, but just I'd love to get a feel of the types of times you're coming up with. Uh, I'm going to show you a way that after this workshop is over, I really want to recommend you go back and really flesh this out, like come up with a bunch of new ideas. Um, oh my, my counseling practice. That's my mom. Yeah, you definitely write your best there for sure.
When I didn't have a phone to distract
When I
me
didn't
all
have
the
a phone to
time.
distract me all this time, yeah, like that. I totally get that. I actually since Sunday, who knows, since whatever 3 days ago, whatever day that was, Cake Day. I actually have not been really going on news sites and Facebook at a bare minimum, and I can't get over how much time I have. I didn't intend to do that for the Times. I did that as like a kind of a lent of that type of news because it's just not fun. So yeah, so Wendy Pauls, when I worked for a small humanitarian aid organization, oh for sure, a lot of freedom in my work. Oh, Wendy, you're getting way ahead. You're extracting the DNA. Oh yeah, that's great. Okay, so there's two more things I want you to do, and we're not going to do them during this workshop, but I want you to come back and do them again. The next thing I'd like you to do is I want you to look at this question here. When will I be at my best? Um, and my sister, when I'm planning things against a timeline, for example, high school commencement, that is not her own high school commencement. She works at a school. I want you to look at this one. When will I be at my best? So this is a bit tougher because I'm asking you to look into the future. And so what I'd like you to do after this workshop, so take a note of this, is just write down some times that when you look into the future and into the things you're planning, when you might be at your best. So for example, I I remember a good friend of mine, a mentor, who's also a dad to boys, said to me many years ago. He said, I was really the best dad when my boys were teenagers. And of course, like I loved having little kids, but it really resonated with me because I knew that when my kids were older and I could do things that just were more natural to me, like work on computer stuff or talk about video games or take them to things that I would just be at a better place as a dad. So that's a fairly intimate one. They don't all have to be like that. Um, you might think about like a project that's coming up at work. Like I'll be at my best. I know there's a woman on here who's been a good friend and very encouraging of me in my business. She has to run this conference for I think a bunch of librarians, and I know she kills it at that conference. So she might write something like, "I'm at my best when I'm running this national or provincial conference." So that's that. And now the one that I want to talk to you about as well is down here, and it's what have I longed for? And I'll just zoom out a little bit again. Um, the difference between longing and failing is this. I'm not interested in things that you failed at, like the business you tried to start that never really got off the ground, um, the project at your home that's still sitting in your garage, the community group that you wanted to run, your efforts to start a fun fair for your school, etc. Things that just didn't happen, I don't care. Nobody, we don't want to hear about that because that's not really part of your DNA. What we want to find out about are um, things that you long for, are things that you maybe got like 80% of the way to good at. So maybe you had a weight loss journey and you've lost some weight, but you just really couldn't get through that, losing that bunch of weight. Or maybe you were really excited about a project at work, and when you finally finished it, you were just It was just kind of like meh, ho hum. So those are the things we're looking for. So again, this is for later on after this workshop's over. We don't have time for all of this, but you'll want to be writing down these two sets of things. When have I been at my best? So the best statements and the log for statements. And I'm going to show you how I like to write them down right now on this whiteboard. For those of you who know me, I live for sticky pad. This is like my favorite thing in the world. So I even brought up a selection of markers. So, all right. So the way I like to illustrate this, and I'll zoom in a little bit here, is I like to draw a line, and then I kind of divide it up into thirds. And up top here, this is where I like to draw the things. So again, we're going past, present, and future. So, what I like to do is I like to draw a line that also represents how much I've been at my best. So, for example, I might put a line like this, and it says, this might represent, I'll say this. I'll say coaching Suns team. Like, I did a good job of that. I was at my best, but, it wasn't like I wasn't killing it. I wasn't like, being amazing. I was just being at my best. But here, this might be, maybe this is like planning mom's B-Day, right? Like, oh, I did a great job. All her friends came. Everybody had a great time. And I felt like I could do that and never be paid. It just gives you an idea for the next steps of how intense this was. Now on the bottom, the same you do for longing. So you might just draw a line like here. Maybe this is one where like a community group that you wanted to start. Maybe you wanted to start a mom's group, or maybe you wanted to start a board game club. And it's never really got off the ground for different reasons. And then over here, you might just have a little tiny one. This might be like, say, family vacation 2016. Actually, like this is one for me. Like, so here's a good example. I think since I've been 19 years, we're coming up on 19 years marriage, right? Yeah, 19 years marriage. I think before we got married, I had planned like these trips to Nova Scotia, because that's where my dad was from, and I wanted to take my wife to see where I spent a lot of the summers and blah blah blah. And I had this really like romantic version of this trip. I don't mean romance in our marriage per se, but I mean like romantic, like, oh, it's gonna be great. We drive through the hills, we'd see my grandmother's house in Westville, Nova Scotia. And we did it. Oh, and also because my family would drive straight out there, I said to my wife, we're going to drive straight out there. And we drove without stopping. I remember we stopped at the Magnetic Hill at like 4 a.m. and like, we're like, why is nobody here? Anyhow, so did we do the trip? For sure we did the trip. Was it the version in my head that I thought was going to happen? No, it was still a fine trip. We had a good time, saw family. I thought it was going to be epic. Now, we do trips to Disney, and those are epic. Those are the ones that are really fun. Those would be like, we went for a family birthday. That would be like Disney for me, would be up here. Disney trip birthday, right, would be up here for me. Those were at our best. So, this is how I like to illustrate it, and it really helped me visualize in the next steps how intense these times were that I was at my best. So, the next thing we're going to move on to now is page 7, and this is where we're going to process our why. Now, again, I've asked you, we don't have time to really spend a lot of time on this, so I'm asking for you just to do the process, and then after the workshop over the next little while, come back to it. But what I'd like you to do is look at where you discovered some of your moments you're at your best, and look for the things that made it at your best. Now I'm going to go back to Wendy Pauls. By the way, Wendy Pauls is on here. If you are digging this kind of stuff and you feel like there's something that you need to, like a career move or a project or just something stuck in your life, 100% go to wendypauls.com, WendyPauls.com. She was my coach. I don't know how to define her: life coach, business coach, because she was all of that. She really helped me make the transition from being an employee to having my own business. I credit her for a lot of that. So if you're in this session and that resonates with you, check her out, hire her for just one session to try it out and go. It'd be great. But she wrote here. She wrote. I had a lot of, so she wrote, when I worked for a small humanitarian aid organization, that was when she was at her best. Then she wrote, I had a lot of freedom in my work and schedule, and my boss was empowering and encouraging. Those are the types of things, the truths, the themes, the DNA, I say, we want to extrapolate from when you're at your best. So, for example, Disney trip birthday. Why was I at my best during that trip? Like, my wife did most of the planning, all the planning, sorry. Why was I at my best? Because it gave me a chance to just follow her lead. And I left my phone in the safe at the hotel and just like really enjoyed taking pictures of my kids and, just being present, which is something that I personally struggle with sometimes because I have a lot going on in my brain. But so take a moment to start extrapolating some of those themes, those truths. And the reason why you did this, what have I longed for? We'll get to that in the next section more, but these are things you obviously want to avoid. So if you have themes that are kind of similar in both, I would say move away from that. So I'm going to give you, why don't we give you 3 minutes just to look at some themes at a very high level, and we'll come back and talk about what's next. So take 3 minutes. It's 7:33. We'll come back 7:36, 7:37, and go from there. Okay, so I would love to see in the comments a few things that you extrapolated. I'd love to hear, what is it about planning the high school commencement? What is it about not having the phone to distract you? What was it about your counseling practice? What is it about those things? Again, nothing too intimate or personal. We are on Facebook, and the internet is forever. There's a chance that this could end up on your tombstone if you're not careful. So, I just love to see in the comments a few of the reasons why you, or how you extrapolated this DNA, as I like to say. And as we're doing that, I will. So the timelines, process, and structure. Oh, well, I did a dictionary for those words. I don't even know what that means. No, I'm only kidding. Only half kidding. All right, cool. So just a few more come in. We'll move along. I just want to say, man, even though this has been a very compressed and shortened time period, typically I would work on just kind of understanding the golden circle. That would be a 1 hour process. Typically I do this workshop over a day from 10 till 3 with a couple of 15-minute and a 45-minute break in the middle. So we are compressing it. When it's over, I'll give you a way to work on this on your own. And of course, you know how to get a hold of me via Facebook, on Instagram, via email, etc. Happy to answer any questions or help you work through this. So the next thing I'd like you to do is you're actually, that process is also the process I have legitimately used with helping organizations come up with a mission, vision, and value statement. So you've actually kind of quasi-written some beginnings of a mission statement. So the next thing I want you to do, though, is this. So when you look at that process, I want you to write down a really simple phrase. And there's a lot of ways to do this, but actually Simon Sinek's suggestion is really great. And it is, and I'll write it down here, to so that. So take the themes, take the DNA that you come up with, and write down your statement to something so that. So I'll give you an example. And in the document, I use the example of coaching the Suns hockey team and building the study group to uh, to work on their grades to get into the university program they wanted to. So theirs might come out something like this: to build the best team so that communities can achieve more together than working on their own. That is a great why statement. Not because I wrote it, but because it's big enough, right? A why statement, as we move forward towards the end, it can't be too narrow. And I'll show you in the next phase of this discussion, this workshop, how your why statement is true in every situation. And if you are currently feeling unaligned or without passion or just kind of spinning your wheels at times in life, it's because things that, well, one of the reasons could be that some of the activities you're taking part in just aren't really aligned with your why. They don't really speak to your truth or your DNA. A lot of research, a lot of science out of academia and scientific says that we kind of discover our why by the time we're 18. And it doesn't really change through life. The things that make your why change is usually some trauma of some sorts, whether that be really positive or really negative, like a big life change. So you can imagine those might be. But another one is to inspire others to work together so that their lives are changed for the better. So this is usually the time people that are really skeptical of this process start giving me the crazy look. They totally think I should just put a poster up in their office with like a picture of an eagle and the word success underneath and call it art, right? That's what people often think. But the reason why this statement is so key is it gives you the opportunity to look at what you're participating in and align it up through the golden circle. So again, we're going to pause for 2 minutes, and I'd like you to just start writing down words on a page to blah 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 so that blah blah blah. I do this action so that this is the result. So take 2 minutes. I have 7:43. We'll go to 7:45, and I just want you to like word dump on here. Get a bunch out. If you nail it your first time, then you've probably done a process like this before, but unlikely not. We'll need to do a bunch. So take 2 minutes.
No, I can't pet food.
Okay, so that was just a quick one because you really do need to set aside some time. I would recommend putting in some earbuds, going to a space in your house right now, your garage or backyard, wherever we're allowed to go, and really work on this. Get a coffee, get a beverage of your choice. It's really helpful to think about what your to and so that statement is. And I'll go through, I put a few examples in the document. And again, for the person who both had coached their child's hockey team and loved putting together the study group to help them get the grades they needed for the university entrance. So their why was to inspire others to work together so that their lives are changed for the better. I did not do a bunch of examples. I gave examples of the who, how, and what. So I'll talk briefly about the who, how, and what, because really it's not as important to determine what these might be today, because these are the things that you'll find as you work backwards from your why. So the point is, as you are going through life and making decisions about activities you'll take or things you'll do, you don't start with the what. Like to say, you know what, I am going to start a community board gaming group. Like, you might like board games and you might like doing things in the community, but if it does not align with your why, it probably will either fizzle out or you'll get bored of it after a very short period of time. So let's look at, there's a few examples of the who, how, and what. And I'll just pause for a second again and say the who is important. It's about the people you're doing it for and with. That's definitely an important part of the process. But if you start with a misaligned why, then it doesn't matter. So a few of theirs might be bored of board games. Very clever. The why, to inspire others to work together so their lives are changed for the better. Who? With a dedicated team of volunteers and other parents. How? By delegating responsibilities to those who have strength required to complete them. And what? By coaching my child's hockey team. This is actually a real life example. I was out with a friend who coached their kids' hockey team and was having a real tough go of it. They're, like me, a bit entrepreneurial. And so they have this sense of doing everything on their own, have a hard time asking for help. And they weren't looking for coaching with me. So they weren't out there looking for advice. But as we got talking and I started asking questions, this is what we discovered. So he said to me, "Oh man, I'm having a hard time like coaching my kids' hockey team. Like I feel like I'm doing it all myself." I said, "Don't you have assistant coaches?" He's like, "Yeah, but like I don't know if they even know what to be doing." And I said, "Well, have you told them what to do?" And he said, "Not really." And I said, "Well, why not?" He's like, "Well, I don't know what they can do." So it got us into this conversation for the next season. So I said, start by, you want to put together groups of people because you feel that like groups of people can actually change lives. Because not one person can do that work alone. So I said, make a list of the activities you're great at and then make a list of the things that you long for. So we did that. I said, now go and tell people what you're longing for. And sure enough, parents were like, oh, you just need somebody to like organize the email list around tournaments. Like, I'll do that. And, it turns out they were like actually a senior education administrator. So they're great at doing that kind of organizational stuff. And they put together this really great team, and it was so cohesive that the next year the league said, could you please teach other coaches to do what you did? So it aligned. So let's start at the bottom for the next one. What? Gaining employment as a veterinary assistant. How? By consciously communicating with clarity to clients how they can best act on the vet's instructions, and by articulating to my colleagues and boss what skills I have they can utilize. Who? Both the clients we serve and the professionals I work with. Why? To inspire others to work together so that their lives are changed for the better. One final one, and I'll start with the what. What? Teaching my children to value teamwork. How? By reading biographies of famous people they know that include strong themes of teamwork. Who? My children. Why? To inspire others to work together so that their lives are changed for the better. It's just, the idea is that every time you're ending up with your why, and it's how you find alignment. So it's not about the job you're doing or the volunteer opportunity you have or the hobby you're partaking in. That's not nearly as important as if you're aligning it to your why. So you can actually do your same job, for example, but now do it with purpose. And so, for example, if you're frustrated at work because you're really good at your job, like you have all the skills and you like the place and you're really frustrated at work, and it's because you discover now it's because your why is unaligned. Well, go talk to your manager or your director or your boss and say, you know what, this is actually what I need to be accomplishing here, and see what happens in that conversation. Now, it may go nowhere, in which case maybe it is time to look for a place that is more aligned with your why. But it might actually, by being aware and bringing your manager to awareness, it might actually help. So I'm just going to conclude, and then I want to leave about 5 to 7 minutes for questions. So if you have any questions, get them ready or start typing them in now. So what I'd like you to do is, after this workshop is over, go back and look at these questions again and spend a little bit of time fleshing this out. I've done this exercise, a lot, and the reason I tell you that is when I do this for myself, I still spend around 20 minutes to half an hour just writing these things down. The one that's really hard is this: when will I be? Like when I look into the future, when will I be at my best? And the one that takes the most time is a when have I been? Because you, of course, have much more history than you do present to draw on. You have a lot more future, too. I'm not trying to say that you don't have a future. But so take about 20 to 30 minutes, do this process. Then actually map it out on this plane and give the things that were more intense a longer stem. And from there, identify your themes. And then finally, do your to and so that. And start that as your why and refine it. I'd be happy to give you feedback on any part of this. So just email me or send me a message. And the last thing I'll talk about is I'm a big believer in assessments. Many of you know I do them. And I'm a big fan of the DISC assessment. It measures a lot of things, but DISC stands for your dominance, interpersonal, speed, and compliance. It just measures how much of a take charge kind of person you are, how you use interpersonal skills to build relationships, how fast of an environment you like to work in, and how important compliance to rules and regulations and policies are to you. And what I think is really great about the assessments with the company that I've partnered with is they do a great job of helping identify ways you behave both normally when you're under pressure, and then it also identifies what motivates you, what your driving forces are intrinsically. The best part about these assessments is it combines and then gives you a lot of great information on situations that you should avoid because they cause a lot of stress. Your communication style, ways that you prefer to relax and calm down, and it's really helpful. Your values to the organization. I did this with somebody who works for one of Canada's largest broadcasters, and they loved it because they were actually going in for a job interview, and they used their assessment for many of the questions they asked, and they actually gave the assessment, and sure enough, gave the assessment to the interviewers, and they were successful in getting the new job. So I know it works great. I'd love to work on that with you too, but no worries about that. So before we do some questions, I want to share my why with you. And my why is this: to help individuals and teams come to clarity, discover purpose, and improve effectiveness through coaching, development, planning, and visioning. And so by participating in this workshop, you have helped me live out my why, and I want to say a sincere thank you for that. And so before we go, I see there's at least one question. Amanda, can you give some examples of themes? Sure. So a theme might be Cindy, earlier, some timeliness, process, and structure. So when she was seeing her at her best, she probably had some times when she was in charge of a timeline or was working within a timeline. She had some real structure there. Process was well defined. Yeah, structure I guess was there. So that's when she was at her best. So when she might be at her best, just to guess, out of these three, is she might be at her best or she might have a why statement like creating clarity around that, so that people can have clarity on what they want to achieve. That was just off the top of my head, so it's not that great. You might find themes like collaboration. You might find themes out of generosity or selflessness. You might see themes out of like acquiring knowledge. As some of you know, I've been going through some education recently, and I spoke with somebody today who's just been like doing school, and they have a job. They've just been doing school pretty much for 20 years now. They're always getting new degrees and diplomas. They're at their best when they're in an education environment. They're still working and making money and have a great family, but that's just when they're at their best. And in turn, they love teaching. So they use their why to like spread their knowledge. How often would you revisit your what, how, and who? So it's not a matter of actually saying who this is for. It's when you look at the situation is when you are able to do I have that here? No, I didn't do it. Where is it? Anyhow, it's not a matter of defining the what, how, and who. It's a matter of looking at the situation, and if you're going to arrive at your best, what are you doing? How are you doing it? And who are you doing it for and with? So if you, like, for example, when I'm at my best, we just pull up mine again. I don't want to misquote myself. To help individuals and teams come to clarity, discover purpose, and improve effectiveness through coaching, development, planning, and visioning. I had an opportunity to work with a client, but I would be working basically on my own. They were going to give me a project, and I'd work at home and then deliver the project back to them. I knew it wasn't going to be great for me because I want to work with people. Like I want to be doing facilitation and group work like this. So I knew that it wasn't going to be great because it just didn't like it. The all the what, how, and who. So what, a project work on my own. How, at my house, doing research on the internet. With who, for this organization, but mainly by myself. Why? Because I want to help individuals and teams come to clarity. It didn't mesh. It didn't get in there. So does that help you? I hope it does. Is a dog under the table?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Isaac's trying to contain laughter. That's okay. I'm doing this out of my house on day, what, 58? What are we on now? It feels like that sometimes, right? Um, okay. So I will. I want to say thank you so much for joining. If you have any questions, oh, I do have a few asks. I would love if you would follow Leading with Nice on Instagram and on Facebook. And you can just follow Matthew Ewell on Twitter. That'd be great. And also on my website, I don't do a whole lot of email newsletters. In fact, there's two people in this I know have been on my email list pretty much from day one and have gotten probably 2 emails from me. That's changing. Now that I'm actually really excited. In May or June, whenever we kind of exit this current reality, I've asked a good friend of mine who has been a communicator with me for probably 15, 20 years. If he would come on board and help me develop a great communication plan and help me execute it. So I'd love for you to sign up for my for the email newsletter. I'll probably send one once a week. So you can do that on my website. And finally, if you have an Alexa, I have a skill. Alexa, if you go to Alexa and search for Leading with Nice Daily, basically every day there's a 2-minute update on a leadership idea. And if you go to iTunes, Google Play, whatever, I have a podcast, The Leading with Nice Daily. It's 2 minutes, and we talk about one theme each week. I'd be really honored if you would subscribe to that. So anyhow, thank you very much, and I will see you, next week or a week after, we'll be doing the same thing on empathy. And not empathy like totally all about touchy-feely stuff. We'll be talking about it from how do you use empathy in the workplace, how do you develop that skill, how is it beneficial to really intentionally grow that. So check that out on my website and sign up for that as well. And I have the date next Wednesday, but we'll see. It might change. Have a great day. Stay safe. Be well, and I'll talk to you again soon.
Boy. Is that it?